Welcome to Sloppy Spoilers with your host, DT2. What's up, y'all? DT2 Comic Shot here. Welcome to another episode of Sloppy Spoilers. This time, we're going to be talking about Black Widow. And we've got a lot of interesting things to say because this was an interesting movie, and I'm being generous. Let me welcome my co-host. Welcome to David Nemesis Howard.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? All I will say is that Black Widow has put me in a black mood, and that is not a good thing in this case. So,
welcome to Jeff, Dr. Faith Bracey.
Good day, night, evening, middle of the day, wherever you happen to be at in the world, and thanks for tuning in.
We are missing one of our crew tonight, Steve Sellers, so shout out to Steve. We always miss you when you're gone. All right, we're going to dive into this film, and in terms of general impressions, before I throw it over to my co-host, I must have to say, if I could sum this up, I would say this is probably one of the biggest missed opportunities I've seen in a film for a while. Because everything that could have and should have been a payoff or a send-off was kind of cut off. And instead, they made a film that feels like it should have been a part of a larger series. Like this was the first movie of a trilogy, or this was an interlude. This is really like an extra content movie. Like if we had seen the movie we wanted to see about Natasha's life, this would have been the movie on Patreon that, you see for the supporters, or this would have been a movie on the DVD extras where, like a whole different kind of thing. Because that's what this was. Literally, if you animated them, you would have the Russian Incredibles ratchet version. And that would have been great. But if you animated this film and left everything the same, except turning from live action to animation, not only would it have been a better and more believable film, especially with some of the physics, we'll get into that, but it would have been a fun add-on to the actual Black Widow movie that should have been made. So this whole thing is just like a missed opportunity for everything that could have and should have happened. So I'll explain that as we go along because I want to hear from my co-host. But I'm as a comic lover, I'm disappointed because we never ever really got real Natasha. But I kind of accepted that because I understand about how you have to sell people like Natasha to American audiences, assassins, hookers, people that struggle with drugs like Elektra. That's why we didn't get the real Elektra. You don't know anything about the real Elektra if all you know is the movie, because they couldn't show you the real Elektra because that would not sell, because they're trying to sell it to, general audiences and kids and normies. That's not the real Elektra. That's not who she was. We've never seen Natasha Romanoff for real. But I said, okay, I'll take that. But this was not anywhere near what it should have been. So as a comic fan, I'm disappointed. As a writer, I'm kind of scratching my head. I'm like, okay. And as a reviewer, I'm like, y'all knocked me out of this movie 5 minutes into it. But anyway, let me hear what my co-hosts think. Start with Nemesis. General impressions.
yeah, I definitely agree with you. I think that this movie, I think there's a lot of flaws in just the concept of this movie. I think there's some flaws in the execution of the movie. I think there's some mistakes with specific characters as well. And honestly, I think Natasha deserved better than this. I think there are other stories they could have told. In fact, there's infinite number of stories you could tell because Natasha is the James Bond of the Marvel Universe, or of the Avengers. You could have told any story from her past. And I think the one thing that I'm going to say right off the bat is that they took one of the most interesting stories they could have told, which really would have highlighted this, incredible woman character, this female character, and her strength and her bravery to leave the Red Room, to leave the Soviet Union, was her defection to S.H.I.E.L.D. They could have told that story. Bring back Barton and tell that whole story about how, who she was before, how she came to be disaffected, how S.H.I.E.L.D. recruited her. That would have been a fitting sign off to her, because then you would have understood her genesis of becoming an Avenger, and we could compare that to how she went out. And I think that would have really paid better tribute to the character instead of this movie, which, I'll say it now, and I'm going to say it continually through this podcast, was purely a baton passing exercise to the next Black Widow, which is Elena. So
that's right. Go ahead, Bracey.
Yeah, for me, this is 2/3 of a good movie. It's strongest in its first act, still pretty good in its second act. By the third act, it really loses the plot. But the main focus of it, unfortunately, is not really on the Black Widow. It's about to be baby Black Widow, new Black Widow, whatever you want to call her, her sister Yelena. And it's too bad because, like Nemesis says, Black Widow is a very popular character in the MCU. We all love her. We all thought she was due her own movie a long time before this. Although this movie really, honestly, should have been in between the whole Infinity Saga with Thanos. That bookends it perfectly, as opposed to like cramming Captain Marvel in there, which should have kicked off Phase 4. That's where you put in Captain Marvel. You bring in a whole new age of heroes. And so, like, if Thor's going to be gone, for instance, you bring in your new most powerful character. So it's really sad to see how Black Widow eventually ends up going out. And as we were discussing in the pre-show, we'll see how Yelena is more Black Widow than Black Widow. And ScarJo knows this is her last MCU film, so she's not quite phoning it in. But between her performance in the script, baby Black Widow gets all the best stuff, and she's just present.
All the best stuff, right? She took over original Natasha's personality. Now, just in response to what Jeff just said, which I think was on point, I have to say this. Captain Marvel, Adam Warlock, Terrax, Silver Surfer, Firelord, Gladiator, Quasar, Nova, both Novas, Frankie Ray Nova and Richard Rider.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We need to see all them folks. That's what Phase 4 should have been, would have kicked off the whole cosmic thing, but
yeah,
maybe we'll do a different pod on that. But anyway, let's start with the opening scene now. I have to say, upon reflection and review, this opening scene was almost a part of a different film. I didn't understand what they were trying to say about Natasha because they don't say it later. So was she like a wildcat? Was she the mama bear? Was she kind of out of control? Was she more like, Logan? Was she more feral? What was her thing? I thought the bait and switch about them being a family, being a whole undercover thing, I thought that was really cool. I thought we were seeing the deep spy side of a covert Russian operation, and we were also seeing the impact of being raised in such a way that told you that you give up your life for your country, you give up your life in service for your country, and you don't get a vote, and there's no freedom, and there's no pushback. It's a completely different way of thinking. You just do what you've been trained to do because that's what you're supposed to do. All glory to the state. I bought all that, and I thought that was incredible. But I didn't understand why they wanted us to believe that Natasha was that way as a child, because if you look at how that starts and if you look at how she ends, Natasha's apologizing for everything she ever did, which was such a character-destroying way. But I didn't quite understand what they were trying to say with this whole thing. And then if they're trying to show her protective nature for her fake parents or her fake sister, she seems kind of disaffected when she sees him again. And she's like, oh, it was all fake anyway. Then they have the big crying moment. Well, he was real to me too. I'm like, y'all need to make up your mind. Because if they're heartless assassins, trained soldiers, that's a great film. But, they did the same thing they did with Elektra. Everybody's sorry. All these people are dead, but we're going to wave it away with some tears and an apology. Now we're good people again? Really? The hardened spies angle was better. So tell me what you thought when you first see, Miss Blonde and Blue Hair on the screen and that whole that whole thing, which also I want Nemesis to get into a little bit of the physics of that plane escape, because when they got on the plane and everything that happened after they got on the plane, I was like, maybe Terminators could do that. I don't know if people could do that, especially non-super soldier people. But anyway, Bracy, you start, and then we're going to throw it to Nemesis, and we're definitely going to talk about our introduction to the physics of this film.
Okay, I'm like you. I bought into a lot of this right off the get-go. It made a lot of sense. It's set a little after the Cold War, really, but there was still spy stuff going on. I like the idea of the deep cover thing. One of the things I like best is we find out immediately after in the last part of this intro here that Natasha has already been through one phase of the Red Room, even as a child. Mm-hmm. And she's been in there, like, they'll want to send her sister up there who's 6. And she's like, oh, you were younger when you went. It's like, ooh, they get him in there right away. You talk about service to the state, from cradle to the grave, service to the state is what they're looking for. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I appreciated about the Red Guardian, when he reveals his identity when they're in Cuba, is we see what a statist he is. He is all on board. These children who he has feelings for. It's evident that he has feelings for these kids. It's evident he has feelings for his fake wife. But he is a true Red Soviet of that time. He is all for the state, all for the party. He is their Captain America, and it all works. And what I liked about this was this gives Natasha a perspective that the Red Guardian didn't have a benefit of, that their scientist mom didn't have a benefit of. Although she wants it, like when he says, like, oh, it's time, we've got to go, we're bugging out, and she's like, there's a moment of hesitation that he doesn't have. She's like, I don't want to go. Now you magnify that 1,000-fold onto a child who's already had one phase of the Red Room and is expecting more in her life if she ever goes back, and so she reacts violently against that. And I can see this being the eventual impetus for Natasha's breakaway from the Soviet bloc to become an American, because like she could hold on to that. And I felt later on when she talks about, like, how did you maintain your soul? How did you keep your heart? When her mom's asking her that, and she's like, you gave me that strength. You told me pain makes you stronger. It's like, this isn't the right age, unfortunately, because, the media wants to hate America. Don't hate on the red, white, and blue. But she should have been, if this movie had been made in like the 80s, she'd have been like, for 3 years, I lived in a country where we were free, and I never lost sight of that. That's what should have been done there. That should have been her whole reason for breaking out and defecting, even at the loss of her fake family and her homeland as she knew it. She had seen a better way of life, and that's what she wanted. That's where I would have gone with that. But as the beginning starts, I really like it. And, even getting into the physics, Red Guardian's a super soldier, so I didn't have much problem with him doing the stuff he was doing as far as the plane. Now, you're not going to take off in a plane with 250 extra pounds in a wing, but there's that. It's still an action flick, so you got a little lot of stuff slide.
Okay. Okay, maybe. I want to hear what Nemesis has to say on that, because, again, I said before we started recording, you've got to pick a set of physics. We're either going to have hard cartoon physics, which is Wile E. Coyote kind of stuff, which is super leaps. Everybody can do super leaps, which is infinite healing factors. We're going to have straight up cartoon physics, or we're going to have real world physics, or we're going to have a hybrid. If we have the hybrid, we have to decide, because hybrid physics are heightened reality. Best example is like maybe the Bourne movies.
Yeah.
The Bourne movies are right at the tippy top of what you could believe somebody could really do.
Well, let me rebut that just a little bit then. Because what we see here with Natasha throughout the film is all of our previous appearances of her in all these movies, she's got the heightened physics. She's got like the Bourne level, the kind of Batman-ish thing going on. She's like right at the edge of being superhuman. But it's like you guys, I'm sure, are going to say, like, she's not as powerful as people like the Taskmaster or Captain America or the Red Guardian, but she's clearly in this movie going beyond human level. She's getting more into like the kung fu movies, the wuxia, where like she's any moment now she's going to be starting to do with some wire fu.
Some wire fu, that's right. So I mean, so it was just all over the place until, I was like, maybe some Terminators could survive that whole plane thing, but I don't know. The father out there all that time, and then when they land, it's like they all don't have a scratch, and I don't know. Anyway, Nemesis, what do you think? Opening sequence, cartoon physics, that whole thing.
Yeah, well, first of all, I want everyone to keep in mind, because I want to touch on some of the good stuff first, but keep in mind what you just said about you have to decide on your physics, because I'm going to come back to that in just a second. The good stuff, I totally believed the embedding of the family. I thought that was a great dynamic. The only problem I had with it, and I wanted to get that out of the way, because I thought that was a cool story and everything. The problem is that the dates don't quite match up. And that is a really nerdy thing on my part, and most people wouldn't catch that. And so I will freely admit that. And if you want to say, Nemesis, you're being nerdy, I'm blowing you off on that one. I understand. But the problem is that if you go with Natasha being roughly Scarlett Johansson's age, Scarlett Johansson was 7 when the Soviet Union fell. Yeah. Okay. So this girl in this movie who is playing young Natasha looks like she's probably 11, 12,
yeah,
which would mean that we're talking 1996. That is firmly into the common, we're past even the Confederation stage where it was still Russian republics and they were in a republic. And we're really into Russia. We're almost to Vladimir Putin's Russia at this point. So the Soviet era is long past, so you need to explain for the, if you want to, you can just ignore history nerds like me. But, if you want it to really fit into the world, you need to explain why there's still a Red Guardian and a Soviet, people obviously with Soviet ideology doing these things, because at that point, it wasn't Soviets anymore. It was Russians, and 90s Russia was very anti-Soviet. We were not to Putin yet, where Putin is trying to rebuild the Soviet empire. That comes a little bit later. We're still in Boris Yeltsin's Russia, which is a corrupt Russia trying to be a Western power. So, that's a little thing, but one thing you're going to find when I talk about this movie is there's a lot of little things that took me out of my suspension of disbelief. Yes. And led me to have problems with this movie. So
this is the period when Russia is basically being run by its mob.
Exactly. So, and if you want a great example of what that looks like and a great example of how you kind of merge those two, go watch GoldenEye.
Oh, yeah.
James Bond movie GoldenEye. They really show you exactly what's going on with that and how you still have Soviet stuff going on, but the mob is now controlling it in Russia. Great movie to look at. So you had that going on. Now let's get into, the physics of what you're talking about, where you got to make up your mind. So the Red Guardian, we find out later he's a super soldier. I totally buy that. They had the Winter Soldier. It makes sense that they would make it super soldiers and stuff like that. And they're doing all that stuff. And he gets up on the plane. My problem with that is that the plane does all these maneuvers, tips on its side, it comes back, and the wing hits on a car. The structural physics of a wing they're not strong that way. So the wing should have split, and the wing should have split a couple times, and then they take off and everything. Okay. Now, if you're going to say we're going to ignore all that and we're going to have movie physics, that's fine. However, I'm going to fast forward you all the way to the third act of the movie. And there's a scene where the Red Guardian hits a dude that's hanging onto a plane, a jet, a military jet this time, and he falls off and hits the tail fin straight into its strength. So head on. Yeah. So that's the strongest part. And one single dude shears off the entire tail fin of a military jet. All right. Those two things
should have split that dude in two.
Yeah. Those two things don't match up. So right there, my mind, the way my mind works, I'm like, yeah, this doesn't make any sense. This movie is just playing fast and loose and do whatever it wants. So you've already taken me out of the suspension of disbelief for regular physics when you're doing this thing with the plane at the beginning, and then a military jet has a 180-pound dude just shear off a military fighter jet, tail. Just doesn't make any sense. And you're going to see examples of this throughout the whole movie where they just kind of play fast and loose with everything in order to advance the story. And for me, the biggest problem was early on, I lost that suspension of disbelief. And so immediately I was in that mode where I'm just like tunnel vision. I'm just like, bam, that's wrong. That's wrong. That's wrong. And that's not a good headspace to be,
So we're supposed to believe that this movie takes place right after Captain America Civil War. And so they try to tie it into the MCU timeline, into the whole Avengers thing by bringing in Ross, and he's hunting down Natasha, and they're doing that banter, or excuse me, whatever. And that whole connection to me also felt very, very strained because I was like, part of it was because we've been so far removed from the time that relationship was fully antagonistic or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it was kind of hard to dredge those emotional connections back up, but also because how Ross still has a job, how he's even employed by the government or whoever. Maybe he has some dirt on some people, because I'm like, you are not competent ever. Okay, you haven't dealt well with Hulk or Thor. You keep trying to blame that on Tony. You know where Thor and Banner are right now. Maybe you should know, because remember that when Natasha went to hunt him down, she said, "We never lost you. We've always known where you were. We would just keep certain people away from you," and all that. So it was like a more competent approach. Out of all the people you're going after Natasha. Of all people, why? She already put all this stuff out on the internet in Winter Soldier. So what are you going to accomplish? Is this just like, are you flexing? What's going to be different if you were to capture her? If it was Wanda Maximoff, someone who has the power to hold a city hostage, as we saw, that's a little bit different. I can buy that a little bit. I can buy that level of manhunt. But Natasha, why? And then
that's another. Just I want to follow up on that. Why is Natasha even subject to Sokovia Accord? She's not a superpowered individual.
But she's a recognized Avenger.
Okay. Right. And so all that happens, and it amazes me. And part of it is because it's one of my most hated comic book tropes. But nobody turns up their game until they're hunting the heroes. You ever notice that?
Yeah.
The Joker can just walk in and out of Arkham Asylum. Everybody's like, la, 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 la. Oh, he killed some more kids. La, 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 la. I don't see you. If they turn after Batman, they call in police from 5 different counties, and we go, the choppers, and he's cornered, and he's running through the construction site, and Andre has to bail him out. It's only when they chase the heroes that it seems like they get serious about that. And so that always just irritates me. So when I'm looking at that whole thing, I'm like, you lost. I mean, you created the abomination. Maybe they don't know that in this story world, but the audience does. And you can't ever get a hold of Thor or Hulk, but thinking you could control Thor was, just ridiculously stupid from the jump. But I'm saying he keeps flexing through that whole sequence, like, what we're going to do to you, and don't try with this and with that. I'm like, you ain't none of what you saying. You're none of what you saying. And then on top of all that, I'm like, it also made me wonder later on in the film when Natasha goes back to try to heal her adopted family or whatever. To me, I would think the spy instinct and the survival and self-preservation instinct would have kicked in and overrode all those warm fuzzies of, I know they try to convince us that the warm fuzzies of the original family kind of turned her heart. But once again, I'm familiar with the real Natasha, and the real Natasha would have had a body double. And by the time Ross got to that woman would have laughed at you because that wasn't Natasha at all. Natasha was somewhere else because she's also a master of disguise. In the movie, she has the face tat. In the comics, she could just be somebody else.
That's a great point, though. I asked the same question. When Ross shows up later in the thing, I'm like, and then all of a sudden they just cut that scene and Natasha is gone. 2 weeks later, she's walking around. I was like, well, what happened? How did she get away from Ross?
that was pretty jarring.
How did Ross screw it up this time? And by the way, what is Ross doing in Russia in the first place? So it's
and see, another thing, a lot of it has to do with the way you write it and how the actors are directed. And here's what I mean by that. There's a way to play a scene that says, because I've seen it, like it's in Highlander, for example. In Highlander, when they first discover that Connor has come back from the dead, everybody around him freaks out and says that he's in league with the devil. You got to get out. If you don't get out, we will kill you because you're some kind of thing that we can't figure out. And maybe you keep coming back from the dead, whatever. So I bought all that. When he's talking to his cousin and his cousin is about to let him go, he says, I'll never forget you, Angus. And Angus kind of blinks and says, just that little short head nod. And that tells me, I don't want to do this. I don't want to exile you, but I know I have to. Mm-hmm. That, if they played it that way, I could buy it. But they always play Ross like, I don't like you Avengers anyway. I don't even know why you messing up my city. And if I had my way, that kind of thing. And I'm like, why would y'all ever trust this man?
He's like Peter Henry Gyrich dressed up as General Ross.
Okay, there you go. Because General Ross in the comics had a thing for Banner. They sold me that in the Norton film. That's one of the best parts about the Norton film is that the rivalry between those two men for a bunch of different reasons is very, very real. And with Betty in the middle. That's perfect. That's straight out the comics. But here I'm like, you clearly have had this thing against the Avengers. Was it because you couldn't control them or whatever? And you put Wanda in this power dampening collar, which I will never forget, by the way. And I'm like, I just didn't understand all his flexing. And Natasha is 10 times smarter than that. She wouldn't have been cornered in that space. She would have had a body double. She would have been 10 steps ahead of that.
Yeah. Well, she wasn't cornered. I mean, think about it. If his trying to catch her is so ridiculous, because how many years had she been operating in and out of U.S. spaces before she defected, and they never were able to tag her?
That's the premise of her character.
Yeah, the whole idea of them ever catching her is just foolish. You know, without some superhero help, without mystics or psychics or something to pinpoint her.
But from a writer's code standpoint, I just want to point out that the reason that Ross Banner thing works so well is that from a human standpoint, all of us, whether you're a comic fan or not, understand that. We understand that there's two people that are like oil and water, just personality-wise, their outlook on the world and everything else that. And then you throw in the dynamic of a dad with a guy trying to date his daughter who he doesn't approve of. Everybody understands that.
Yeah.
You don't need to explain that tension.
If you want Ross hating on the Avengers, you've got to make him J. Jonah Jameson and the Hulk is his Spider-Man. Then he's got beef with the Avengers. Why do you have this monster, this walking WMD on your team? He's going to freak out eventually. He's going to wreck a city, and then I'm going to be coming right for you guys.
Yeah, now if they played it that way, that makes more sense, and that's more comic accurate. But here's the thing. It's the through line between the movies. It's the story thread that connects the film. So even if you have different directors, we as the audience have something to follow and latch onto. But
the other problem with that is that they decided to go away from real Hulk and turn him into
Bro Hulk.
Yeah,
whatever it is that we got. So
right. Yeah, dabbing Hulk, signing autographs to teenagers with the glasses, and Professor Hulk, you can miss me with that.
Yeah.
So that's how we transition somewhat into the modern day. And, Natasha's trying to make good on her escape or whatever, but then we get the jump cut and we see that Yelena, which is a Black Widow, is out on a mission, and then she gets a dose of the red cloud of the mysticky dust, the mind control breaking dust, which is ridiculous because of pheromones later, but we'll talk about that when we get there. So the mystic mind control breaking dust happens, and only in the movies can you snap out of mind control like that. So you've been mind control all this time, and something happens, and you're you like that. And, what am I doing? Okay. So then that's going on, and we find out very, very quickly that, now the Black Widows are victims of some type of external thing. And that was another thing that made me like, because they didn't just ruin Natasha, they ruined the Red Room. The Red Room was this awful, ugly, scary, no one to be subjected to a kind of place, but it had a mystique and it had kind of that government feel. But now we see it's kind of the small, petty kind of woman controlling. It got reduced. They destroy that too. But anyway, so Yelena gets free and then she sends some of the magic goo to her sister, and the sister is automatically going to know what to do. And that reminded me of the scene in Wonder Woman where Hippolyta shoots an arrow and it just lands. And it was like, they're like, what's that arrow going to do? And Hippolyta's like, she'll know. Diana will know. So that's what this was. Like, Natasha will know. Here's the red goop from the red room to break the mind control. Okay. And when I'm looking at that whole thing, I'm like, it felt overly convoluted because why didn't you just send a coded email? Why didn't you just send a text message on a burner phone? Why didn't you just do something other than something that had a 98% chance of failure? That's what I mean. I mean, of course, they could have had other means of communication, but what are the chances that secret formulas get to however they got there? And Taskmaster still knew that Natasha had it and that whole thing. So I'm looking at the bridge between how we get Natasha to get back with Yelena and the code that Yelena sends her and how she responds to it and that whole thing. And the last thing I'll say about this is a whole other thing that makes me feel like we should have heard of you before now. Even between Natasha and Barton, Natasha and Clint had plenty of private moments, especially in the first Avengers, where they talked about the past, they talked about things they cared about. And then we get a big reveal, a necessary reveal in Age of Ultron, that Barton actually has a farm and a family. If we go with all of that, and Natasha's talking to his wife, Miss Pregnant Belly, so if we go with all that, no way Natasha never mentions. She would have said it to Banner when they were talking about the shower thing and we're both monsters and I can't have kids and, and my fake family, that kind of thing. And she would have said it to, that kind of thing. And so if Florence Pugh wasn't so charming, she's just charming and endearing and instantly you can't help but like her. But if you just kind of step back and remove yourself from that, the connection between the two women felt very tenuous to me to introduce this whole part of Natasha's life, which was the whole foundation of her life. And we never heard anything about it. So what do you guys think about all I'm talking about, the whole connection, the red magic cloud dust breaking the spell, the army of widows, and how that's a clear message from Yelena to Natasha to, come help us deal. What do you think about that? Start with Nemesis.
Yeah, I think my main problem with this is that I had an inkling that there was something wrong with this whole concept. And then the longer the movie went on, the more I got concerned. By the time the movie ends, we find out that there are thousands of Black Widows all over the world. And I'm going to talk about that when we get to that, because that brings up other problems. But the problem here is that, the whole setup is okay, and they're going, and they find out that they're trying to eliminate this one Black Widow who's freed herself somehow with the magic, the magic dust and everything. And it didn't occur to me until you were talking just now why it just felt hollow to a certain extent. I liked the setup, but it didn't feel satisfying as it could have been. And the reason is I've seen this movie before, and I've seen it done better and written better. It's called Jason Bourne. This is basically Jason Bourne, all of it, the whole thing. And one of the things that really bugs me about the fact that there are like 2 billion widows on the planet is that when you have some people like this, the number one thing you are going to be afraid of, especially if you've got them under tight control like this, is that they'll eventually turn on you. So you keep their numbers small and you keep them under control, and you keep a level or several levels between you, barriers, buffers between you and them, because you don't want them coming back to find you. That's exactly what happens to Jason Bourne. Jason Bourne is incredible that way. And you come to find out, and it's the same way. The way they train Jason Bourne in New York, it's the Red Room, but it's for everybody, for soldiers and stuff. They did the same things to them. They did mind control to them. Everything is exactly the same, but just feels so much better done, so much more grounded in possibility, not reality, but possibility and possible reality, other than this, which just cheapens this even more, because now you're looking at it and you're like, yeah, this is a cheap comic book imitation of a great movie, which was Jason Bourne. And that's really sad to say.
That's right. That's right. I definitely agree with that whole thing about how we've seen it done before and better. And the other thing, and then I'll throw it to Bracing, the other thing about all of that is the move or good writing is supposed to tell you, why is this happening now? It's not just supposed to tell you what is happening. It's supposed to tell you why it's happening and why is it happening now. And based on how the movie unfolds from here, these events, if something like this was going to happen, it should have happened a long time ago. And it's one of those things where it's like, I don't know how to say it. When Natasha and Yelena meet, I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but when they actually meet, Natasha's like, I didn't think you want to see me. And Yelena's like, that's ridiculous. So I was like, I didn't understand the connection. Wouldn't there have been a cry for help from another sector? Or wouldn't Natasha know more about the Black Widow program, the Red Room? Or wouldn't she be kind of determined to take it down because of what it did to her, if she already knew what it was doing to other women, or just everything about it? I'm like, I don't know. The movie did not do a good enough job of explaining why it was happening and why it's happening now, and why now they care enough to bring it down and that whole thing.
I can explain that just real quick before we go to Jeff. It's because the one and only time before this that we see Yelena and Natasha together, they're kids, and then they split them up, and we never see that they have any relationship past that. So why would we know or care what their relationship is or how they interacted with each other and a whole host of other things? So.
True. Go ahead, Jeff. Let me hear your thoughts.
All right. I want to hit on something initially that you mentioned that bugs me with the new phase of Marvel movies coming out. And that's the fact, this movie should have really been set in the 80s, for instance. At the height of the Cold War, you explain how they're all extremely long-lived because of whatever super soldier process they've developed, even if it's watered down. So even as a kid, if they've been introduced to the Red Room, they're going to age slowly. Because there's this whole trope in Marvel about, the main characters not aging. We got the sliding time scale. So things like that fix this. If superhuman people live longer, if they're a little bit better, a little bit hardier, if they heal a little faster, a little better, they get better telomeres in their DNA, all that sort of thing. There's all kinds of ways to explain it. Now, like you said, why haven't we heard of her sister before if we've had all these interactions? Okay, she's a super spy, but she still could have brought it up, especially if they're planning on doing something with Natasha at some point. Like, I left a family behind. I left a sister behind. I left a lot of sisters behind. If I think about the women of the Red Room as a sort of dysfunctional family. But I can already see that Marvel is making tremendous mistakes in this area with the trailer for the blast it. What are their names now? Icarus, Cersei, all those guys. The Eternals. They're like, we have been here all the time, guiding your history, your civilization's like. So why weren't you there for Thanos, dog? What's up with that? Chitauri invasion. You just sat that one out. I'm presuming the snap took out half of y'all too. Yeah, but that's cool. We're more like I think eternal life would be the most important thing to an Eternal. So no, what Marvel's getting into now doesn't make any sense. It should be like Star Trek, except with rare exceptions like Enterprise. Star Trek should always move forward. Don't go back. Move forward. That's the only way to progress the story. If you're going to go backwards, you need to go way back. You've got to go into a time before the next explosion of the age of heroes. We had some in the World War II. We could have some in the modern age, and there's little blips in between. But you got to go further back. So that's a problem I have with a lot of this stuff. You're trying to force in stuff that you didn't anticipate before. And if you're building a world and you know this is going to be a long-running franchise, and I'm impressed with what they have done, but you have to consider these things. So the integration of elements that have been in place, you have to be prepared to work them in a way that is logical. And this doesn't do this. And from what I'm seeing of newer Marvel movies coming out, I'm afraid they're not going to do it either. The next problem we have here is the Red Room itself. Now, Nemesis rightly put out, it's Jason Bourne. I have to agree with that. That's better than the example I was going to go with, because there is the indoctrination, the mind control in there. Where I was going to go with it, especially once you find out it's this many flipping widows, this is John Wick. This is a global organization of assassins. It's a massive network. If he's got all, what's his name, Drago, if he's got all these widows all over the place. But then again, we get into the same doggone problem. If he says they're running around the globe, they're toppling governments and all this, like John Wick, you can tell these people who are in it, a lot of them don't really want to be in it. If you look at like Halle Berry's reaction, it feels like they were all kind of brought up into it, and maybe we'll get that story someday. So if it's a similar thing, there has to be a system in place for that. And it's like Nemesis said, you've got to have some sort of means of command and control. So my answer is not a pheromone, not chemical indoctrination. That's dumb. That can be broken. If somebody catches one of your spies, and if you don't have the kill switch on them, well, if we have to go that far, we dissect them and we figure them out. So what you need to do is you need to put some microbombs in their skull. Something's going to just kill them outright. Something's going to blow out their medulla oblongata or their brainstem. No problem. And that's not something you can just easily cut out from underneath your jeans like your little tracker. No, you put it in the skull. And then you've got a means of control. Like when the girl is forced to kill her, it's like, I don't want to do it. It's like, well, you ain't got no choice. And like, you can even go, because we got superhero technology, you can even have something, since they're talking about these ways of controlling animal responses, you can even have something that stimulates part of their brains. I forget which system it'd be, but it almost acts like forgive me for mentioning this pretty bad film, The Happening, where it just basically turns you super suicidal. And the agent takes themselves out like that. It doesn't have to be overly complex. It doesn't have to be nanotechnology. Just something that stimulates a certain part of your brain, which just turns off all survival instinct. Because it's out there in nature. We've got funguses that they will jump on things like ants, and it forces the ant to go out and be eaten by birds, because that's the next stage of its life cycle. So there are things in the natural world that exist there. So that's what you need to do with the Red Room in that respect, because this grossly heavy organization doesn't work. It's like Nemesis said, you have to have a tight unit. That's the best way for secrecy. That's the best way for efficiency. And on top of that, we've already seen in Civil War that they had another program going on with Captain America level super soldiers. That was Zemo's whole thing, was taking them out, and as well as breaking up the Avengers. So that alone, it's like, well, why do we need the Red Room then? If we've got this, if we can make a whole bunch of Red Guardians, I mean, you can make a little bit of an argument, like, female spies and assassins can get to some places where men can't, and I'm down with that. But, that many, it's even in a fantasy movie, it just gets to the point of being ridiculous. And the worst line of all in the film is when they have the guys like, the Earth's most like overly abundant resource, like girls. Is like what a trash line. What an absolute trash line in this film. It's like, we want to, like, if you want to beat the patriarchy, here's the ultimate patriarchy. This guy right here, he just considers women nothing but like little tools. It's like, that is comical on a way that, you're not going to find Magneto, Doctor Doom, or even Thanos spouting a trash line like that.
The only thing they didn't have was a line like flashing down at them saying misogynist, misogynist, misogynist.
That's right. We're going to talk about the Harvey Weinstein.
I wanted to make a point.
Harvey Weinstein.
He's a Harvey Weinstein insert. There's no way around it.
Yes. Oh my God. Poor Ray Winstone. Winstone.
I love Jeff's point about this being set in the 80s. And you know what? They already had it set up. They have a hero in the 80s who was doing SHIELD stuff at the time. And that opening scene could have been Red Guardian fighting Ant-Man and the Wasp. And then when he's in prison.
Oh, dude. Yes.
And then when he's in prison, bragging about how he fought Captain America when he never did, the ways he's do that is because he's ashamed that he couldn't hold his own against
Ant-Man and the Wasp.
Ant-Man and the Wasp. So,
beautiful. I love it.
Yeah.
So now that transitions really well.
All right.
What I wanted to talk about.
I want the Nemesis cut.
Right. No, seriously. What I wanted to talk about next was this right here. That being that once they introduce the family, the dynamic of the movie changes again. And it's not that it changes for the worse. It's just, it makes you instantly realize that Natasha is the fifth wheel in this mix. If it wasn't clear when they bring in the Incredibles ratchet, Russian version, everybody's funnier, everybody's more interesting, everybody's more deadly. Everyone's taken more seriously. The actors play it with more gravitas or humor, whatever's required. And I was like, not that I'm not enjoying it, but it's like, isn't this supposed to be about Natasha? Shouldn't this be about Natasha? Shouldn't we be giving these accolades to Scarlett for her acting and Natasha for her characterization? But once we meet each member of the family, they upstage her, which is the wrong direction.
Yeah.
For the Black Widow movie. So, for example, the Red Guardian, we knew from the trailer, he was basically a Mr. Incredible, Fred Flintstone. I said before we started recording, it reminded me of Bouncing Boy. So we knew he was going to be a clown and get clowned. So it wasn't, at least he had some moments where he showed how strong he was and how invulnerable he was and how tough he was. At least we had that. But we still had to have the obligatory scenes where he's belittled, he's humiliated, he's, just the loyal dog, just, you pet me, I guess, feed me, I guess, okay, that kind of thing, which I've had more than enough of. And then when we introduce the mom, of course, the mom is the mastermind. Of course, she's a smart one. Of course, she's a dangerous one. Of course, she's the one that's behind everything. But later on, she betrays them again. And then at the end of the movie, they're all like, did you feel okay? Does everybody feel okay? Touchy feeling, handshake, hug. Are we feeling? Just how you feeling? And I'm like, and then Yelena, as we talked about quite a bit, she completely steals the show. This movie is 2 seconds from being Yelena's movie. So we know it was a baton passing movie, but she's hilarious. The only thing, like I said, it's Florence Pugh's charm in the way she plays her. The physicality of the Yelena character wasn't necessarily anything outstanding per se. And she had a lot of inside jokes with making fun of the superhero pose, which was the best, funniest scene to me possible. Yeah. So when we introduce this family, she's got her guns drawn. She's ready to take them out. She's not sure what side they're on. They, might be willing to kill her. And then they, Natasha and Yelena fight when they meet. And then, but they're having a sister kind of fight. You didn't care about me. You didn't come see about me. I didn't think you wanted me to talk to you. I didn't think, I thought you wanted to be left alone. And you aren't my sister anyway. What? So all that goes down, and then we get the best scene with the flipping of the head and the arm and the head and the arm and the head, and you're such a poser, which I love. And then that whole thing, but like once we get to the family kitchen table dynamic, for me, that's when the Black Widow movie officially ended and the Russian Incredibles movie started. And I was like, y'all do realize we want to see some more of this, right? Y'all do realize it's a shame this is a one-shot thing, because this family is great. Everything about this family is hilarious. We want to see this again. This could be a weekly series. This could be a 10-episode limited series. But we want to see this. This is great. This is the standout of the movie. I'm like, and Natasha is the least interesting character at the table.
I will just chime in real quick and say to you, not only that, I would have liked, Marvel is about to come out with their What If series. How interesting would it have been if we got an Avengers type movie series or mini series or whatever with this family and some other Russian characters, and they're dealing with superpower threats within the old Soviet Union. And we have to see it from the other side, and they're trying to fly under the radar of S.H.I.E.L.D. and everything else. That would be amazing.
Yeah, absolutely Dark amazing. Star, Vanguard, Ursa Major, bring in some of those guys too.
I mean, one of the other things that I'm going to say real quick, and then I'll let go kick it back to DT. I thought it was funny as hell. She was bagging on him, but at one point, Yelena gives him a little diss by calling him Crimson Dynamo. She's like, what is Crimson Dynamo or whatever? He's like, it's Red Guardian. I was just like, I was dying.
I did love that.
Oh, that's like, and then I was like, well, wait, where's Crimson Dynamo? I want to see it.
Because it's another inside joke, but it's just for the comic people.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, okay. And so, like I said, that whole thing, that's when the Black Widow movie officially ended. And like I said, I want to see more of them. I was a little bit, and still am a little bit confused about whether or not there is real trust in this family, because sometimes they play it like there's no trust. They're like, we're all spies. It was all an act. And then by the end, they're like, we totally love each other for real. I am proud of the daughters. And I'm like, okay.
I got a point on that one.
Go ahead.
Okay. I have had the opportunity to interact with a number of people who were Soviet citizens or Soviet military, both during the Soviet era and afterwards. It's a real character trait, especially of people that grew up in the Soviet Union, because no matter how much you grew attached to someone, even family, you had to be careful what you said, how you said it, and who you said it to. Always. Okay. So it really is a thing, especially if you grew up in that era. Now, I don't know if they knew that and they did it on purpose. Maybe I'm giving them too much credit, but that came off real for me. So I like that. So.
Okay. All right. So, Bracy, what do you think about the whole family dynamic?
There's a lot to like about the family. I love their interactions. Again, like you said, Natasha is the least interesting person at the table, which is a real shame because Yelena has become Natasha. As I stated earlier in my intro, she gets all the best lines. She gets all the best emoting. ScarJo isn't even doing the best emoting in the film. When they have that great moment where who cares? I'm just a scientist. I just do what I'm told. I made the mind control stuff. And you just watching Yelena just sit there. And I was sitting there like, is she going to stab her mother in the face right now? Like the conflict of the emotions, I hate you right now, but you're the only mother I know at the same time. Just a great performance without any words. I thought right there. I thought David Harbour was great when they're not just having him be nothing but a buffoon. And even in his buffoonery, he managed to have some really heartfelt dad moments.
Yes.
And it made me wish for something. Like when he can't quite reach his daughter. He's trying to tell this ridiculous story about, what fathers do in his own clumsy way. And then he does something that calls back to her the happiest times in her life. He starts singing Yelena's favorite song, Bye Bye Miss American Pie. And that gets to her. And that's something only a father can do, only family can do. And so my thing is, if you're going to play them up as spies, you play them up as spies. You really get into that where they deal with the fact that we bought into this fiction for a while of being a family. And if that's going to be the case, I think I would have stretched out to maybe 5, 8, or even 10 years of living in deep cover. That would have really made a far more solid bond, I thought, than just 3 years. I thought that's something that the training really could have overcome. So if you're going to have the familial bond, you need a real reason for it to be there much more strongly. And if that's not the case, they should be like in the movie Mr. and Mrs. Smith, when they each discover they're spies for different agencies. That sort of tension all the time. where they're like trying to figure out like, oh, is my little sister going to backstab me? Is it going to be mom? Is it going to be dad? Who's it going to be? And then they have to learn how to trust each other all over again. That would have been really interesting.
Yeah.
But the thing that I wish they had done the most, and unfortunately they weren't, because they set it up that when in the red room you get neutered. I wish this had actually been their family, because in the opening scene, when David Harbour, he is such a believer. He is religiously believing in the power of the state and the party. I didn't realize that these were not going to be his kids initially. I didn't realize that was not his wife initially, because they sold me on that in the beginning. And he's like, no, it's fine, my daughter. You were strong. My girls are strong. You'll be tough. You're going to be great. You're going to be the greatest agents. And that would have fit in with that later scene where he's like, you've killed so many people. I am so proud of you. If they were really his children, and he had been indoctrinated into this lifestyle so much, he's such a patriot to his system as the way it was then, that, I'm willing to let my offspring be neutered. Because I was thinking before we knew that he wasn't their father, I was thinking like, this guy's a monster. He's so horrible. He's sending his daughters off to be, butchered internally. But, you can still work that, even if that's their whole process of all these super agents. It kind of gets in the whole, like something like Crying Freeman, where all the assassins, they get neutered because they don't want too much attachment. They don't want people creating lineages, because lineage leads into dynasties, which leads into power struggles. That sort of thing can work here. So if you're going to have an adopted familiar bond, you need a lot more than just those 3 years. At least Elena and Natasha could have had that being raised up in the red room together. But if that's the case, she surely would never have left her there. And if she did, you need to have some reason where, like, you see a flashback of Elena telling her, like, she's still a statist. And she's like, you betrayed everything, mom, dad, and I believe in, like, you are no sister of mine. That would have played in really strongly as well. So that's what I wish we'd seen. I did enjoy the family interaction, such as, like you said, these woefully broken and desperate people clinging to this fiction. And there's a part of me that hopes that they do enjoy some sort of bizarre family life, because I like them together. Mm-hmm. All the actors played this really well. They had great chemistry and great charisma within their family group, except for Natasha, because ScarJo's done. It's just such a passing of the baton. It's like you said, this is no longer her movie at this point. Mm-hmm. And she's just like, you guys carry the torch, because I'm out of here. But that's where I was at watching this part.
Well, her personality is flat. If you think about it, you can remember Yelena's lines. You can remember just about everybody else's lines. You can't remember Natasha's lines if you think about it, which is always indicative.
Yeah, and Natasha used to have some of the best lines in the series.
Some of the best lines are very interesting to watch, especially when we found out that, like when she was with Loki, she's like a real Black Widow. She's preying on you even when you don't think she's preying on you, and she's reading you even when you don't think she's reading you, and she's paying attention. That kind of thing, that was great. But here,
she did have one moment. She did have one moment like that towards the end of the film, but
that
was a little silly.
It was far weaker than the Loki scene. Far weaker than that scene. Right.
So let's talk briefly about the.
Can I add something real quick?
Go ahead.
I do want to say on the whole family dynamic, I think it's unfortunate that, like you guys said already, Elena is more,
Natasha than Natasha.
Yeah, Natasha, and then the mom character is really the more serious version of Black Widow, and then the dad, Red Guardian. I really bought that character a lot because I understand that mindset he's in, where he was a true believer and is now disillusioned. And I thought that was one of the greatest things in that film. And I would say that I would love to see Black Widow movies going forward. If that's Yelena, then it's Yelena, whatever. But I would encourage any writers that are going to write stuff like this going forward, they need to do their homework. They need to watch Jason Bourne. They need to watch La Femme Nikita for sure. And they need to watch an old movie from Bridget Fonda called Point of No Return, which is all about
the La Femme Nikita remake.
Yep. All about female agents and using their assets, their training and their feminine wiles in order to accomplish missions. And then one female agent trying to get out. Great movie. So, if anybody in our audience has never seen these movies or these shows, go back and watch them, because that's what this movie and the Black Widow franchise could have been. You could have had a whole Black Widow franchise and I would have eaten it up. Just eaten it up.
Well, even that, what was that movie that Jennifer Lawrence did recently, like The Red Sparrow? That was The Red Room all over again. Yep. That was the Black Widow movie we should have gotten right there.
Yep, Red Sparrow is a good movie.
Let's talk briefly about the hysterectomy line because they made such a big deal out of it. It was one of those things where I felt like for a moment I had stepped over into Seth MacFarlane territory. I was like, really, y'all? Really? And it just felt out of place to me. I want to know what you guys think about that, because it was just like graphic and gross and they were laughing about it. And I'm saying, I wonder if Hawkeye and Tony had made that same joke. Or maybe Hawkeye and Banner. And Hawkeye is sitting on the helicopter and Banner's like, I can't have kids. And Clint's like, yeah, I understand the whole thing with you and Natasha, blah, blah, blah. And Banner's like, what do you mean? Well, they just reach right up there and just rip everything out, the guts, and didn't have over his eye. I wonder if Barton had said that, how it would have gone over. So it just felt really graphic to me. It just felt really like they were making fun of something that wasn't funny.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, you can't have Natasha's whole presentation in the Age of Ultron be that I'm a monster because I can't have kids and they did this to me and all I can be is an assassin because I have no possibility for a family. And then now it's this graphic, almost kind of locker room joke. Those two things feel so very far apart to me. I'm like, did y'all watch Age of Ultron? So I want to hear your thoughts about that. What do you think about the whole reach in, pull out the guts hysterectomy scene? Start with Bracy.
Yeah, that was weird. It would have been fine if she had stopped as like, I don't have a uterus. Mm-hmm. And then like he goes like, oh yeah. Kind of wasn't thinking about that. That could have been a point of realization and maybe shame for him. Mm-hmm. The like you said, the whole being all jokey about it. Marvel does this weird thing in the MCU, which I hate. They it's not as bad here because they didn't actually make that into a serious moment, but they should have. But they take their most serious moments and they punctuate it with something silly, and they do that in the post-credit scene here as well. It's like when we see Yelena standing over Natasha's grave and being all sad, and then we get some idiot blowing her nose right next to her. But Doctor Strange dramatically puts on the cloak of levitation for the first time, and then it starts wiping his face. Thor watches Asgard go up in flames. Then we gotta have a joke about Cord and Meek over here. They constantly do that stuff, and it kills the power of these moments. So it's not quite as egregious here, but the fact that they felt that they needed to insert a joke here about something that has been previously shown that Natasha feels incredibly strongly about her inability to ever reproduce. And the same thing for her, sister. The fact that they would do that. And it's not even presented as gallows humor. It's not presented as black humor. It's presented as sardonic, smarmy, jokey, Joss Whedon sort of humor. And this is precisely the wrong place for a joke like that. And let's not forget, you talk about male characters. Let's not forget when Tony's thinking about, he's trying to lift up Mjolnir, and he makes the joke about inserting that, I forget what they call the rule, where like, the Lord of the Land gets to have a first crack at your wife whenever you get married. And the internet, yes, thank you. And the internet lost its friggin' mind over that. Yeah, you couldn't, that joke would not fly if a couple of guys were saying it.
Prima nocta.
Yeah.
Yes, prima nocta.
Yeah,
which was a real thing and is horrifying to even think about.
If you go watch Braveheart, and you'll see a great scene of that in action, and it pays off so well later on in the film.
Yeah,
But no, that prima nocta thing, there was a lot of backlash over that, and it was just something that was kind of casually mentioned, and it was just a jokey joke, and this was graphically described, and I'm like, go ahead, Nemesis.
First of all, I will say that this movie was not as overtly bashed the patriarchy as I thought it could have been. There were it had its moments, but for a Black Widow movie, female-led superhero movie, it was not Captain Marvel. So that is in its credit. I will give it to you right there. But this is one of those moments, I think, where it is one of those jokes. It is a trope. I have lived it, having, and been around women who have thought this was funny. It's that it builds on that old stereotype that men automatically think it's icky and gross and can't handle women talking about, plumbing stuff, their period and everything else. And so in order to just make it men even more uncomfortable, to drive them right out of the room and out of the conversation, you just make it as nasty and as gross as you can talk about, and you'll just shut the man up, and it's a trope. It's out there. And there are a lot of women that absolutely believe that, first of all, no man can even can't even hear the word period, and it's like, excuse me, there's a lot of men raising daughters and we have to deal with that, so, we and it's not dealing with it. We're there for our daughters and our wives and everything else, but it's out there. And I think that's exactly where this came from. It was very obvious to me that this whole thing was supposed to be a big, inside women's joke. And I think it really fell flat. I think it fell flat for a number of reasons. So, not the least of which is having a full hysterectomy, especially having a full hysterectomy period, is not a laughing matter, because they only do that in serious situations, and then having a full hysterectomy against your will, that is just absolutely.
As a child, let's not forget that, these are young girls, prepubescent girls, maybe teens or whatever. But anything about that is disgusting.
Yeah, I mean that's Mingala types, level stuff. So, it's just absolutely horrifying.
I'm always the same, man. I just wish it was the same rules for everybody. That's all. I just wish I knew where the lines were, because the lines keep changing, and I don't deal with changing lines.
Well,
that's
the equivalent would be somebody joking about, forcing a man to have, like, okay, here's a perfect example. And
forced castration.
Game of Thrones, where they're talking to Varys, who is the spy master, and he not only had the berries cut off, he had the twig cut off, he had the whole shebang cut off down there. Nobody was joking about that, Nobody's making light of that. That is a serious thing. So,
because it ain't fun. Okay, which leads me to the next thing that I know we've all been dying to talk about, and that is that there's so much in this movie that. Now, those of you that follow me on Twitter know that I have said from the moment Suicide Squad came out, Suicide Squad can only be enjoyed if you see it like a cartoon with live action actors. Because everything about it is like a Saturday morning cartoon. It's just the adventure just happens and ridiculous things happen and everybody has quippy lines and then this happens and that happens. It's a cartoon. So if you see it that way, it just happens to have live action actors, you can get through it because you won't be trying to put more gravitas in something that doesn't have it there. Well, I say that to say this, that when we get to the prison rescue scene, everything about that scene, if that scene didn't throw you out the movie, you must have been asleep already. Because everything about the prison rescue would just have you, wait, what? It's on the level of just... somebody said, we need a big action set piece right here. So we're just going to throw everything but the kitchen sink into the scene because it'll look cool. Because there was no thought, that went into making that scene happen.
This is another one of those physics moments too. So
right. That's right. That's at the heart of it. But I mean, I'll just give, my gripes and then I'll throw it out to you guys. I thought it was funny how Natasha did the pose, even after all that dragging about the pose. And it was like, I have to echo Nemesis's statement that we've seen this done better. It was called Jason Bourne, because like y'all realize everything about that rescue attempt was stupid, right? I know you wore the white camouflage and everything, but Scarlett got red hair. And so that kind of actually makes you stand out. If you
white camouflage, and I'm never against the snow once.
Right, right. But you come in, and she's like, "Why couldn't you give me a better copter?" And all this different kind of stuff. And I'm like, "But you come in with this basically Archie's jalopy old Bessie in the air, and then you think, oh, Archie Andrews is ScarJo now." And so then you think, I'm like, okay, they shot at it at the beginning, and then they stopped. Then they let them do what they wanted to do, and then shot at it again as they were leaving. I'm like, yeah, I realize it just takes one good, well-placed anything on the fuel tank, and okay, there's that. Y'all all should know that. And the fact that this copter was able to get anywhere near this established prison, that's a joke. And then the fact that you're literally defeated by a sonic wave that causes the avalanche. Okay, that never happened before. Y'all didn't think about that? There's no fail safe to have it. Okay. And then I'm like, y'all do realize that any sniper ends this like that, because Natasha and Yelena are in a static enough state. They're in the same place for the same time. They're doing whatever long enough to where anybody that you don't have to be dead shot or bullseye, you just have to be a good shot, could have ended this whole thing. And then it's like it was another mixed thing where you're thinking, how invulnerable is Red Guardian? They're like, how strong are you? Like how, like what, you could have done this yourself.
Yeah.
You could have just bouncing boy your way out of it. Just boom, bye. I'm like, okay. And then we just talked about, the hysterectomy joke where they just pulled the guts out. Okay. And then there is entirely too much banter for this to be, oh my goodness, race against the clock. We got to get him out about, oh, no. And I'm looking at this whole thing. I'm like, y'all realize that Wile E. Coyote had better schemes than this, right? But anyway, so let me hear what you think about that whole mountain rescue. Lord have mercy. I'll start with Nemesis.
All right, where do I start? There's just so much here. I'm going to preface this again by saying, once they took me out of the air of suspension of disbelief, like I said, I just started noticing all the things. So let's start off with the fact that Red Guardian, breaks somebody through plexiglass, a guy's head. He should have been dead right there. Guy lives, then destroys another dude. Then he kicks down a 3-inch armored door, kicks it out. Now, he's a super soldier. I will give you that. But I've never seen Steve Rogers ever kick down a 3-inch armored door. Steve Rogers and super soldiers are the peak of human efficiency, but that is a whole other level.
That doesn't count for MCU.
Yeah, but okay.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I mean, Steve kicks a car, which slams into another guy, which knocks the guy 15 feet away. Steve's not human efficient. He's superhuman in these movies.
Okay, so I will give you that. But then Red Guardian starts to climb up. Some dude jumps on his back, and Red Guardian loses his grip because
he shocked him. He had a taser.
Oh, did he? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, then my bad. We'll pass on that for a second. Meanwhile, Red Guardian's hanging out on the ground. So then the helicopter, the flying jalopy comes flying in, and they start aiming at this thing first with small arms fire, and it's deflecting bullets. But some of the small arms fire is getting through the helicopter. So I'm like, right away, my mind is telling me, okay, this thing is not armored. Okay, it might be bullet resistant. The glass might be bullet resistant, but small arms fire is getting through this thing. So I'm like, oh, they're in trouble here. She's gonna get shot. Yeah. And by the way, going back to that first scene with the plane, we were talking about the physics. Let's forget about the fact also that plane flew from Ohio to Cuba, and SHIELD didn't interdict that slow ass plane.
That little Cessna made it all the way to Cuba.
Yeah, but let's forget about that for a second. So she's up there. Then the defenders of the prison break out a 20 millimeter auto gun and open fire on this thing. And it hits right where Yelena is. At that point, the movie's over. Yelena's dead. She's a splat of red against the cockpit. So what does Yelena do? She's like, oh, hell no. She puts the autopilot, the auto hover on, which I don't even know if that's a thing on that old helicopter, and it's not advisable to be used right there. So now think about this. She's getting shot at by everybody and their brother, including people with 20 millimeter cannons. And the helicopter is just sitting still, hovering 70 feet above the ground so that everybody and God can take a shot. They can spit at this thing, And then she gets this gun that has some sort of, like bazooka gun and fires it. All right. Now I'm really going to nitpick, but I'm nitpicking the hell out of this thing. When you fire a rocket, the backblast from the rocket has got to go somewhere. There's no backblast. Not only that, there's no ricochet. She doesn't even look like she did anything. She's not even breathing hard. And that thing comes flying out. The whole damn inside of the helicopter should be on fire. She should have flown backwards or possibly flown out of the helicopter. And then it hits that thing. And then the avalanche comes down. And let's skip past, the horrible CGI as Natasha's swinging around looking like Spider-Man down there, a bad Spider-Man, and then finally comes down and picks up Red Guardian. Do you realize, if we think about it, that Yelena and Black Widow just killed an entire prison worth of people?
That's what I'm trying to say.
All of those people are dead. Nobody's coming to rescue them in time. They're running out of air, food, and water out in the middle of Siberia. They're all dead. They just killed hundreds of people.
It's okay. They're all dissidents. It's fine. This is how Russia works.
Because when nobody innocent in that prison, they would all deserve to die like that.
Yeah. So ask me how I really feel about this scene. Anyway, that's my little mini rant. I'm done. So.
Okay. Go ahead, Brayson.
Okay. Now I want to preface this by saying, for the most part, one of my favorite parts about this movie was the action. There are so many great action scenes, which during the pre-show I talked about. It was comparable to what the Russos had done with the Captain America movies and the Avengers movies following it. I really liked the action. I liked a lot of the camera work. I liked a lot of the pacing, the staging, everything from the physical fights to the car chases. I was in it. I was excited. I was enjoying it until I get to this. This one took me out. This one put me in Nemesis headspace because it broke me. Because as soon as we get to Red Guardian in the prison, I immediately think, well, what's he doing here? Okay, if he's here, it has to be voluntary. He can break out anytime he wants to. Because I'm looking at it. He's in a standard prison. He's not on the raft. He's not in something like that that's made for super soldiers. He's in a regular Russian prison. So I'm thinking, like, he just walks out anytime he wants to. So, like, when they radioed down, like, it's time to go, I thought that's exactly what he's going to do. And that's how he started. He just starts whipping out guards, kicking over doors, grabbing shields and blocking open, closing gates and things. I thought he was literally just going to walk out. He's going to hang on that riot shield to deflect bullets. And that's another thing is a shame. We never got to see Red Guardian with his shield. But I thought he was going to just deflect bullets and like, you guys can't do crap, and I'm just going to make my way out of here easy peasy. It's like in the movie Hancock when they put Hancock in jail. Hancock's in jail only because Hancock wants to be in jail. And I thought, once again, that would have played into so much of how he is a product of his system, how he is a true believer, that when they decided you're too dangerous to be free, that he's such a patriot that he's like, okay, for the good of the state, I will remain incarcerated until the day where maybe you guys call me out of cold storage. That would have been a great way to play the character. But instead, we get, like, the whole movie, I kept waiting for him to get his moment to shine, but the whole movie, he ends up being a buffoon. His only good scene is in the opening with the plane escape. And then after that, he's completely incompetent. So here he is. He can't escape this place on his own, which he should have been able to do. And the whole, like Nemesis said, the helicopter thing was ridiculous. It should have been to bust him out after he just tears his way through the fences and everything. Yeah. Nothing stopping this guy. They just throw down a rope or they land and boom, they're out of there. Although, if you want to get into logistics of somehow sneaking into Russian airspace and that old beater of a jalopy, that ain't happening. It's got no Stark tech on it. We get no mention of anything like that. That's like 70s level of like plot convenience right there for action films. So now the girls have to save him because he can't save himself, and that is the worst thing. They even try. They make a little nod at the chopper gets shot up a few times. You start to hear the engine whines like, oh crap, they're going to go down. They're all going to have to fight their way out. They're going to have to steal a Jeep or a truck or something and get out of here. No. Apparently, while the chopper was not armored, it did have its plot armor defense on. Engage plot armor. That wasn't autopilot. That was engaging the plot armor. I did notice bullets exploding against the canopy, even though they're piercing through the metal skin of the chopper. But they're blasting on this canopy for some reason. Although we've never been told why. It was like 3 layers of polycarbonate, bullet resistant windshield. Nope, none of that. We have to assume everything. We have to do the work in the movie, which in this case is just even more BS than I was willing to put up with. And you want to talk about not getting shot, Nemesis? Yelena has a total Pulp Fiction moment here where she slides open the door. She grabs her rocket launcher. And by the way, guys, I have fired an AT-4. Back blast area clear. 15 feet back, that thing's going to jet out. That's a Rambo moment. Like when Rambo shoots the RPG with all the vets behind him. It's like, you just killed all the vets you just saved, man. What were you doing? Just to shoot that guy through the windshield. Could have just pulled out a gun and done it. But okay, we're going to be movie cool here. She fires this thing, and as she opens the door, it takes her forever to get this thing up and going. And this dude is shooting with this cannon. And you see bullets stitch on one side of the door and then the other with 6-inch spacing.
Yes.
Why is she not blown in two? She's sitting up here like Vincent Vega and Giles going like, oh, man, how did that happen? I guess I'm going to walk the earth like Kung Fu. I've got a new lease on life. And Marcellus's soul into this briefcase here instead of the red goo. I was like, no. And Taskmaster's in this film. He's the copycat? Why is Natasha swinging like Spider-Man? She literally does the Spider-Man flip into the pose that Spider-Man was doing long before she did. I was like, what? No, this was for me, and I love action set pieces. If you want to throw one in the middle of the film, I guess like we've got so many beats, we got to get into some more action. And after so much better action in the film, to just throw out this hunk of junk and just try to make it happen, and it fails visually, it fails narratively, it fails emotionally, and it fails character-wise because these are smart ladies. They are master spies. And either you let this bull just smash his way out because he's got the capability of doing it, or you pull a move like the old TV show Leverage or Jason Bourne, something, you sneak in there and you get him out. You find out he's all locked up like the way Winter Soldier was in Civil War, like the special cell and stuff. This doesn't fit in this film at all. I cannot suspend any amount of disbelief for this film. This particular scene, it's worthless. It's worthless.
And I will add that they had to put the exclamation point on this scene as they're flying away. They're saying they're going to St. Petersburg and they don't have enough fuel to make it. And then the damn helicopter falls out of the sky like Bugs Bunny. The only thing it didn't do was stop because in that midair because it ran out of fuel. Hits the ground. The helicopter rotor's not auto rotating. Nothing. Just hits the ground and sticks there. Doesn't blow up. Fall apart, and they just walk away. I
will admit, like Red Guardian could be able to walk away from that at his level of power as demonstrated in the movie. The girls are not. Exactly. But I did think that was funny. I'll give them that. I thought that was pretty funny.
It was funny, but it didn't fit at
all. But
it
shouldn't have been. The whole point shouldn't have been like, I don't think we have enough fuel because these tanks are only so big. We don't have enough fuel because this thing got shot and shit.
Yeah.
We're leaking fuel.
Not only that, it fell out of the sky.
It was straight
vertically. Yeah,
it was clearly dropped from a crane.
Yeah, So it was just comical. It literally was comic booky.
Right. Literally comic booking. That's what I mean when I say you got to pick a physics structure and you got to stick with it because it's going to be jarring. But see, it's jarring on a subconscious level. Yeah, you don't have to actually consciously process what's bothering you, but your brain will know, like, wait a minute.
Like, for instance, here's a way that it was done right. If we look at the Matrix, we had established people who were asleep in the Matrix were human level. Then you had the people who've been woken up, and they had the super kung fu. And then there's another tier above that, the agents. The agents are amped up over those people because they have to be better. Otherwise, the machines are going to lose control. Oh, and one other thing I forgot to mention about the Red Room a while back. If you want to see a non-magical way of breaking somebody out of mind control, I highly recommend the film Equilibrium. As you watch the character in there, what's the actor's name? He just played Batman. Christian Bale. As you watch Christian Bale, as he's weaned off the drugs that keep him being an emotionless assassin, and he starts to break out and become a real human being again. There's a good example of that, or as Nemesis keeps referring to, the Bourne series.
Yeah, great movie, Equilibrium, and example 1,507 of Sean Bean dying at everything he's ever been.
I hear he's actually refused to take parts where he dies. He's like, all right, it's too much of a trope. I'm not doing it.
Yeah, I don't think it's possible. I think that he's off himself at some point. But.
All right. Two more things we're going to talk about, then we're going to wrap this up because we covered the most stuff. But I do have to just chime in again here on Nemesis' point about the incompetency of the men, because, one of the ones that bothered me the most was Mr. Handmaid's Tale, Friend Zone, Alfred, the Batsuiter's perfection, it will be when it fits a woman. I don't want, that whole thing. That whole thing was all those tropes rolled up in one character. I'm like, really, dude, really? So she's gonna talk to you like that. You're the one, just like Kay Kane was, dragging Bruce Wayne. I'm like, you broke in the Batcave and you broke in Wayne Manor and you broke in his office and you stole everything he built while you're dragging him. While you're talking about, the suit is perfection, when it fits a woman, and I don't want a man getting credit for a woman's work. And those were the trailers. And you thought we were supposed to watch that show.
It's like Obama needs to suddenly pop out the side of the screen like Ed Boon used to in Mortal Kombat. Like, you didn't build this, and then pop back out.
Yeah, right, exactly. And then he's obviously he's the hapless beta that's in love with the girl that's never in a million years going to be with her. You are Ducky. You are not Blaine. You are never. You are never.
I'm just grateful he's getting paid at all. That's the only thing that doesn't make him a simp. But
every time we see this guy, he's taking a nap on the ground. Now, I want you to put them two things together in your mind, that he has access and connections to this kind of equipment. And every time we see him, he's parked out on the ground like he's living a bohemian lifestyle. And he's just longing for Natasha. And what's his name? There's a Supergirl that was Toyman's son.
Oh, yeah. The one that was a programmer and stuff.
Yeah. He got the great singing voice. I'm like, we meet you. You're like, Kara would never, without her powers, Kara wouldn't date you. You get that, right? So it's like this guy, and I'm like, that's another trope I can't stand. I'm like, you get a life, she ain't gonna never get with you, and whatever. So those other two things we have to talk about are Taskmaster and Harvey Weinstein. So we'll do Taskmaster first. We've already said countless times that was a dude. The stunt man was a dude. Everything about that presentation, walk like a dude or whatever. And then we have the big reveal that everybody called at the end. But also, you didn't realize that when you did that, I'm looking at that like I got something stuck in my eye. I got some soap in my eye from the shower. Because I'm like, you realize that made Natasha incompetent because you put a bomb in the building, didn't kill nobody. And I'm like, and then she's guilty all this time for nothing. I'm like, But anyway, so we have this big reveal. I'm like, this has been a dude. You walk like a dude, you throw like a dude, you stand like a dude. There's a way you hold your shoulders. There's a way that your hips move this way as opposed to the swivel,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And if y'all think that's sexist, then be mad. What I said was there's a way that your hips move that's different because women have a flexibility in the pelvis. They have more fatty deposits, everything about that because it shifts for birth, which is something that is not in us at all, biological males. That's what I'm talking about. And so, and I'm saying that to say that everything about the on-screen moving told everybody this is a dude. And then here we come, you know, we're just in, okay. And then I'm like, I said it before, that Olga is known for her beauty. She's known for that exotic look. She's known for her attractiveness. So you're going to ugly her up and give it a big eye and the scars and all that. And I'm like, okay. And then it was just something that, you know, I didn't buy. And then, of course, when we get to the Harvey Weinstein part, she's also redeemed at the end because she comes out of it. And every woman's a victim.
Yes.
Just by the time this is over, there's no one that was actually a patriot for their country except Red Guardian, and he's a buffoon. But all the women, even though they're whatever, they just end up being victims of this guy, whatever. And I'm like, so I tried to do something that was impossible. I tried to say, if I didn't know the comics, what would be my response, which I can't ever do. I don't know why I keep trying to act like I could ever do that because I can't. But I said, if I'm coming into this movie fresh and I didn't know anything about the Taskmaster character, my response would have been that nothing I saw really makes any sense, because if you can do that with Taskmaster and everything that happened with that character, I'm like, you, instead of, you know, doing an army of widows that may or may not be on that level, you just would have made an army of taskmasters and taskmistresses, whatever, and taken over the world or sold a formula. There's a lot more you would have done if you could do something like that. And then it's like, when you reveal that you're, because there was the man behind the curtain, there was the Wizard of Oz, Harvey Weinstein, evil character, but your physical antagonist, the one that's fighting ScarJo, when you reveal that that's a big mind control, or they don't really want to do it, or they have a very quick, we just met you, now you have a redemption arc, then it doesn't feel like there's any real stakes. It doesn't really feel like there's any real emotional connection or stakes because, okay, to give you the better contrast, when Hulk saves Betty in the Norton film, I stand by my love of that film. I will not apologize for loving that film. Mm-hmm. When Hulk saves Betty, Betty's screaming, they're using the sonics. You know, Hulk is trying to fight through the sonics, and we know Hulk's strength has increased. He's got to get angry, and he's getting angry, and he's fighting. He takes the parts of the tank and uses them as a shield, and Betty's screaming, Bruce, okay. Then we see that Ross is so dead set, so obsessed with what happens that he puts his own daughter in danger. And if it wasn't for the very man he was trying to kill, who wraps his arms around the woman he loves and protects her from that helicopter explosion and the fire, Betty would have been toast. Mm-hmm. And Hulk looks up and catches Ross's eye and growls, and he says with his eyes what I just said with my words. He said, "You fool, you think I'm the monster? You could have killed your daughter trying to capture me." That's stakes. That's emotional connection. That makes you care. That means any confrontation they have later on in film, we're going to feel the weight just because of that scene alone. With Taskmaster, which is hard to say 3 times fast, from start to finish, I felt nothing. I felt zero. I'm like, okay. Oh, you're his daughter. Okay. Oh, you're okay. I'm like, you know, and that's again not what I wanted to see Natasha fight, because Natasha uses her emotions as a part of her arsenal. Again, the Loki scene, which is brilliant. So I'm like, you didn't need to do that with Natasha out of all characters. It should have been a situation where somebody was trying to out Natasha. And instead of doing the, you know, I'm just going to see from my nose with one blow, by the way. I just get it right the first time. And, oop, look, the spell's broken. Okay. What are y'all, like the poppies from the Wizard of Oz? But anyway, it should have been someone that was bringing Natasha's game at a level that she herself had never seen. And then she had to go to another level to defeat that foe. That's what they tried to do with Harvey Weinstein, but they didn't quite pull it off. But that should have been the Taskmaster function. I'm more widowed than you, so let me see if you can pull out the stops and go to another level to beat me. But instead, I felt none of that, flat like a pancake. So let me hear your thoughts on Taskmaster. Start with Bracy.
Oh, man, what a disappointment for me. For one thing, Taskmaster is way underutilized in the film. We had such a promising start with him and I'm going to keep calling him because that was a dude in that suit, except for that ridiculous CGI head at the end. I mean, it's God knows it was so obvious. I think when she initially takes off the helmet, the actress complained that the suit was heavy, but the very next shot, when Taskmaster is walking across the floor with the teeny tiny little woman head coming out of the big suit, is like, that's the actor, that's the stunt guy, and that's her head CGI'd into the spot. It looked ridiculous. It was so stupid. You talk about a moment that takes you out of a film. I was like, no. This is like PlayStation 1 levels of bad, man. Come on. Can't do that. I got to pull a Biden on you. Like, come on, man. No, not accepting. I do not accept. Taskmaster is one of those villains who's not considered like top tier as far as popularity. But for those of us who are comic book fans, he ranks up there just like Mysterio is not a top tier Spider-Man villain, but I've always really enjoyed the idea and the a good implementation of Mysterio in a Spider-Man comic. And I even liked what they did with him in Far From Home. They made him a really credible threat in the way they used a more modern technology to create his illusions. I thought was pretty brilliant. So you really got the essence of the character out of that. Here we don't get the essence of Tony Masters at all, and even if we're turning it, because the MCU likes to play with origins a lot, if they're not the most prominent and well-known classic characters. I could have bought him being a Russian agent, especially after they lost the Winter Soldier. Well, you've got to replace somebody as dangerous as that. Who better than the Taskmaster? He's got a whole power set that makes him really scary for any hand-to-hand combatant to deal with. He's got the skills of like half the flippin' Avengers, and plus he's obviously been physically enhanced. He's pulling off the superhuman moves and all that. And then when you make that reveal that it's like this teeny tiny woman in this oversized suit, I had the same reaction. You want to talk about detail? You're wondering how you would react if you didn't know anything about it. I had this reaction when I was watching Solo, the Star Wars movie. We get introduced to this cool masked character, and they're leading this band of like rebel/renegades, and they're thwarting all this Empire stuff. And the person in the suit's clearly a dude. Like you said, the way they move, the way they fight, it's just different. Men have a center of gravity up here in their chest. Women's is down in their hips. We're built differently. And if you know anything about movement, and I'm an artist, I observe things in people all the time. I just know how this functions. Even on a subliminal level, you are going to know. Nothing in any of the trailers told me Taskmaster was a woman. Nothing. Right. And so I had the same reaction when this cool masked character takes off their mask and is like, oh, it's like a 16-year-old girl. Right, whatever. Yeah, it just completely killed any mystique for that character that had been built up to that point. So Taskmaster, even if you have him as just this silent assassin character, he has that mystique of the classic masked little spoken characters like your Boba Fett or your Rensler from Tron Legacy, or any of a number of faceless silent killers or antagonists. who just seem unstoppable. He can be like a superhero version of a Michael Myers or a Jason. He's just this force that you can't beat. You've just got to run from. Now, what do we have here? We have Natasha, and like, I love your analogy of like, I'm more widow than you are.
Mm-hmm.
That is great. There is no way Natasha can beat this thing. There's no way she can beat the Taskmaster.
Mm-hmm.
It is Schwarzenegger versus the Predator. You are not going to win a one-on-one. So what do? Natasha has to do things. Once she understands how the Taskmaster works, Natasha has to do things that have never been done before. Natasha has got to outfight her in a way that has never been done before. She has got to out-strategize, out-plan, out-tactician, set up booby traps. Let's see a situation where she leads the Taskmaster into a situation where she has the advantage. And a great example of this is the way, like, if you look at the prequels, the way Darth Maul leads the fight into a space where he can separate the Padawan from the Master so he can take them on one at a time. He controls the battlefield. And by virtue of that, he is able to take out Qui-Gon Jinn. We need to see something like that. We need to see the Schwarzenegger booby trap. Natasha needed to do something that she couldn't just do. She can't outfight the Taskmaster. It's just not possible if they are on a even plane physically. She's not going to outfight somebody who's got all these fighting styles in their brain, who can copy anything you do, who can anticipate anything you can do. So you have to come up with something that's way outside of your wheelhouse. And that would have been a very satisfying conclusion to dealing with the Taskmaster. The second thing is, and you hit on this, and like, okay, we see the daughter through the window of the building. We see Weinstein up there in the building. And then a second later, boom, bomb goes off. So did he shield himself with his daughter?
Exactly.
Because he's not scarred up, but her face is all jacked up. What kind of bomb blows up one person and half a story, but not the other guy in the room? Why are you not even trying?
Maybe a Green Goblin pumpkin bomb, maybe.
Yeah,
because remember, it blew the flesh off of the men that it hit, and their skeletons dropped. Maybe that.
But here we see an entire room go up in flames, maybe a floor. There's like, the reflection was like a very big explosion. I understand there's like, you're doing some things cinematically, but you also have to understand, we're watching this, we're invested in it. This guy doesn't have any superpowers. Did his fat save him? I don't know. It doesn't make any sense. Good thing I was such a fan of McDonald's when it came to America, came from America. The only good thing, it saved my life in explosion. No. It's and they never bother. And that's the thing that pisses me off the most. They never bother to explain how he survived. It's not like, some sensor went off. Just a quick flashback. I hit the panic room button. I was pulling my daughter in. The fire came and it lit her up before I got her all the way into the room. Something like that. You can't just ask me to accept that you blew up a room when we can see two people are in it. One of them is scarred and the other one's fine. You can't just do that. It does not work.
There's a child. What about the weight differential? What about proximity to the bomb? But still, it shouldn't have mattered in a room that size.
No. It's like talking about like cartoon and comic book logic. That's really asking us to stretch it to the nth degree, because when you do that sort of thing, and you can't even give me an explanation, not even just 30 seconds, 10 seconds, 15 seconds, something to explain. Like, Natasha's like, this whole thing, I killed him. Like, no, you didn't. Here's how. You insult my intelligence as an audience. You insult everybody's intelligence. It just shows how little thought you put into it, and frankly, how little you kind of cared. You just decided at some point to make a spectacle, which is a real shame, because I really liked 2/3 of this movie. But by the end, kind of like watching ScarJo's performance, you've just kind of given up.
Yes, yes, and she did play like it was a funeral dirge, like it was a pre-funeral procession, especially when she gets the blonde hair.
Yeah,
She played that whole thing like I'm on my way out. Go ahead, Nemesis. Thoughts about Taskmaster?
Yeah, I've been saving some of what I'm about to say just for this moment. So,
oh boy, let's have it.
I'm going to hit both these characters. I'm going to start off with the Taskmaster character. Now, I think you guys hit on a lot of what's going on with Taskmaster really well. So I'm not going to even touch on the fact that, the big reveal turned out she was a woman and everything. In fact, let's say that I'm okay with them gender swapping Taskmaster. It bugged me, but let's say that, they gave us a reason for it and everything. I think one of the problems that Scarlett comes off so flat in this character is that she has no arc in this movie at all. She has no story arc. The story arc really belongs to Elena. She is the one that grows in this movie, that changes, that becomes a different person. And part of that problem, and this is going to lead me right into Taskmaster, is that they had the perfect vehicle to have a story arc, to wrap up Natasha's story. Because we start the movie seeing Natasha supposedly thinking she kills not only this general, but his daughter. Then she comes to find out that the daughter is alive. Well, instead of doing it in the ham-fisted way they did it, it could have been that she decides, we do know that it's a girl, that they figure out that this is someone that was in the Black Widow program. They try and use the magic dust on him. I'll give you all that. That's broken, but it's broken already. It's in the movie. So they try and do it, and then Taskmaster, for the first time ever, speaks her first lines in the movie. She laughs that hollow laugh and brings that mask off and goes, "Why do you think they would ever need to mind control me to want to kill you?
Oh, that would have been so good.
You tried to kill me when I was a kid." And then Natasha is fighting against her for her life, against one of her past mistakes. And then you do all the stuff that Jeff was talking about. And when she eventually defeats Taskmaster, probably with the help of Red Guardian and Yelena as well, then Natasha's got a choice. And we see Natasha make the choice that she didn't make before. And we see character growth. She lets Taskmaster live. Taskmaster's gonna get captured by S.H.I.E.L.D., imprisoned on the raft, but she doesn't kill her. And so that gives us some closure to Natasha as a character, so that when she dies only a few months later, or whatever it is in Avengers Endgame, it's actually years later because of the 5 years and everything, we have some closure on. We have an arc for Natasha's character. They had it all right there. Yeah. Even with all the mistakes they had, with the magic dust and the female Taskmaster, all of it was right there for them, and they didn't grab it because that was Natasha's mistake. That was her flaw. That was her arc to clean up, and they didn't use it. It was all written there.
That's so perfect, man. That's so perfect. I can't believe they didn't do that.
No, that's awesome. How I envisioned it, how I would have written it was, I would have had Natasha run into a training room and activate a secret protocol that she knew and Taskmaster didn't, and then have her stand perfectly still. So Taskmaster didn't have anything to imitate. And then if Natasha moved, then Taskmaster steps on a bomb or lets something out, or Taskmaster has no idea what's going to happen. Yeah. So if you mimic, that doesn't mean you're going to win.
Or you do one of those, you do one of those X-Men movements where you go to the danger room and you just disengage the safety protocols.
Something that Natasha would know from having been through the Widow program that Taskmaster might not necessarily, or maybe
I like it.
Built into Widows, but not give her anything to imitate. Just say, you don't know how to get out of here, and I do.
Yeah,
but you can't trust what you see me do. If I step to the left, there might be a bomb on your left. Go ahead.
Yeah, but this character was just so clearly Natasha's arc, and they chose, because they wanted to pass that baton on to Elena, not to give Natasha an arc at all. And you still could have done everything else you did with Elena. Elena is getting the baton pass, whether we like it or not, and I like it. I think you guys like it. But we still could have closed out Natasha in a good way just by giving her a story arc, and they had it set up there. So then
this would have been this would have, because they've made the reference again about all the red in their ledger.
Yeah.
But this was the biggest blotch in her ledger right there, killing a child.
Yeah.
And dude, you solved it. This was the perfect opportunity to have her going away and us really feeling good about her.
Yeah, that was the same arc they did with Agent May and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., killing that child all those years ago and haunting you and making you cold and detached because you didn't want to face your own pain and guilt.
Yeah. So there's that. Now let's get on to Harvey Weinstein. You guys have touched on everything about this character, but the one thing I really wanted to bring up about this character, and the one thing that is really dismaying to me about the MCU going forward, is they're doing some stuff that I think is good, or some stuff that could turn out to be good. I'm not going to say that it's good now. I got to wait to see how it all goes together. But some of the stuff looks promising. But some of the stuff has gotten just lazy. And lazy to the point where, one of the strengths of the MCU versus DCEU a lot was the MCU, when they tied these movies together, made sure that they had continuity. Feige was always keeping continuity and all this stuff, so that the comic book nerds would look at the whole MC universe and look at it as a whole and say, yeah, A, B, C, D, E, it just flows together. And sometimes there were small retcons here and there, but they were small. One of the biggest ones here is the fact that during the whole, olfactory thing, and that's, let me touch on that real quick. That whole thing is ridiculous. So much so that I want to go back into the next two Avengers movies and see if Natasha ever smelled everything. Because if you sever your olfactory nerve, it's it. That's it. It's gone. Your olfactory sense is gone. You never smell anything for the rest of your life. There's no way to regenerate a nerve. You never smell anything again. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. But Harvey reveals that there are thousands of widows all over the world, and for decades, at least 2 decades, those widows have been toppling governments, starting wars, affecting stock prices, everything you could possibly think of, he's been controlling from his little room there. And who's he answering to, by the way? It's not the Russian government anymore, I don't think so. But that's a whole other story. My point is this: you have clearly established that there are a number of very powerful agencies, spy agencies, secret organizations in the MCU, besides the ones that we know of in our real world. You've got the CIA, the KGB, the Mossad, MI5, MI6. All those somehow have missed this dude and his legion of super hot chicks that are going around toppling governments and everything. All right, if you want to say all the government spy agencies are incompetent, all right, I'll roll with it. But then you're going to tell me that Hydra's incompetent, because Hydra's not going to stand for somebody messing up what they want to do.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Now my eyebrows raised a little bit. Then you're going to tell me, as an MCU watcher, the S.H.I.E.L.D. is incompetent. Okay, if you say so. And then to put the icing on top of this cake, you're going to tell me that Wakandan intelligence is incompetent? That Wakanda doesn't know about any of this?
Yeah, because wasn't one of the widows at the end Wakandan? Because one of them looked really Wakandan to me.
Yes.
It's possible, but it's like, okay, now you completely lost me. You lost me when it was Hydra. Then you're saying Hydra and S.H.I.E.L.D. didn't know about it and didn't take this guy out. Now you're saying Hydra, S.H.I.E.L.D. and Wakanda, and probably, if there was a real aim, and if Dr. Doom is out there with Latveria floating around with somebody and all this other stuff, they didn't know anything about it either. And the Chinese Communist Party didn't know about it, and all of those people, the 10 rings, nobody knew anything. I'm like, yeah, no, sorry, not happening. And I know some of you out there may be saying, "Ma'am, you're overthinking this." You're like, yeah, you're damn right, I'm overthinking it, because I'm a comic book fan. That's what we do.
That's what we do.
We look at all of this stuff and see how it ties together. And the thing that we love is that they create a world that ties together. And when it doesn't work, and when it's broken, and this breaks everything right here, this breaks the world. I don't think anybody realizes it. This concept that there have been thousands of widows out there affecting world events for decades and nobody knew about it breaks the world. It breaks it all.
That's right. That's right. So not only do we get the evil white man controlling the strings, everybody's dancing to his tune. He's responsible for all the evil in the world, literally. Not only do we get that, but we get the fact that the vaunted Black widows are just victims and puppets, which actually makes them smaller.
Yeah.
And we never get the explanation as to why Natasha is the standout Black Widow. And then not only that, but it also felt like, because Natasha always had some of that one girl chosen in all of the world vibe. We knew, since there were other girls in that red room, she wasn't the only assassin. But there was something about Natasha Romanoff, because everyone that knew her said something to that effect. But we never got to see what that something is. But now she's just one among many. And now it's kind of, a legion of widows, and they're all coming out of it. And, they killed all the other Winter Soldiers and they hit Bucky. But what do they do with, all these freed, trained widow soldiers? And they're obviously international, because the camera made a point to pan in on the women of color. If you noticed that it was a kind of bend over backwards, it just isn't about white women moving. And they kept, showing all that. And I'm saying, my goodness, you broke the world, but the things you opened up don't make any sense given everything we've seen up to this point.
Well, not only that, let's think at it. One of my things that I love to do is I love to write villains, and I think like the villains a lot. So if I'm a villain in the MCU, and suddenly it comes across my radar that out in the world there are thousands of beautiful women who have borderline super soldier abilities, spies, assassins, man, I am scooping up widows like candy. They're getting scooped up by the CIA. They're getting scooped up by the KGB. Hamas, is scooping them up. The Mossad is. Everybody is like running around. It's the new thing. Everybody wanted to get vibranium before. They're like, hell of vibranium. We're scooping up widows.
It's a widows. It becomes a widows arms race. Yeah. But I tell you, the most disappointing thing for me is like it stepped right out of WandaVision when Natasha's talking to her mother. She's asking, "Oh, how'd you keep your heart and all that?" And she's like, "Oh, you gave me that strength, and I made the whole thing about it. It should have been the taste of America, but we can't be patriotic these days." And like you said, the only patriotic person is treated like an idiot.
I'm sorry, when you just said "taste of America," I flashed back to Ricky Bobby and you
Baby
said.
Jesus.
You taste like freedom.
Baby Jesus is my favorite Jesus.
Yeah.
Anyway, looking at that, and what does she do? She absolves her mother. It's like, you were raised in the system. You never had a choice. It's like, well, so were you, but you got out. So no, she had a choice, but then you absolve her of making a choice, because you even call her a coward at the dinner table. And now that you've made all these other people mind controlled, now that you've made everybody a victim, you want to make this. If you want to make this all like about a empowered women sort of thing, you've just utterly failed, because none of these people have agency anymore. You just took it all away.
Right.
That's just what I was going to say. It goes straight to DT's point, and it makes Natasha little.
Yeah,
it makes emphasize the point she doesn't have an arc, because her arc was part of breaking out of that cycle and redeeming herself and becoming a better person, and then we could have put the exclamation point on the end with Taskmaster, but then that would also leave the question at the end, if you want to, change the world, if we're not going to say break the world with these thousands of widows, now you've got thousands of free radicals out there. They're going to make their own choices. And obviously some of them are going to go bad. Some of them might go to Hydra or go to AIM or go to,
killing is the only thing I know how to do. So I guess I'll keep doing that.
Go to Serpent Society and a whole bunch of other things, so.
Well, the way to do it, and the way I would have done it, putting on my writer's hat, was the way to properly address everything we're talking about is to make Natasha be the first widow that completely broke free of the mind control on her own. There's no death, there's no anything, but through strength of will or through a high threshold tolerance of pain, or because we saw her do that with Barton. When Barton was under Loki's spell, she smacked him, and so they went out, and then she smacked him some more, and then she talked him back into himself, which made me believe that you've been through that process. How else would you know? That kind of thing. And so Natasha actually should have been a legend. Natasha Romanoff should have been the Black Widow that everybody knew, even though it's whispered in hushed tones the Black Widow that everybody knew was the only one to beat the mind control and be a spy, be or whatever, because she chose to. And that's what made her distinctive. And then everyone else would have lived in that shadow because no one else would have been first. And if you do that, that also, because I would have had Natasha, well, I mean, I never would have got rid of Natasha. If I had to get rid of Natasha to make way for Yelena, I would have had Natasha retire. And I would have had her say something like, there would have been no endgame death. It would have been more like, you know, I lived this life, I paid my dues, and now I just want to make sure that anybody who chooses this life does it on their own and not because they're being mind controlled. That's a hero.
And we saw with like Endgame, she could easily transition into an administrative sort of role.
Yes.
Or like she's leading the team from the chair, you know.
You know, we were talking about the earlier, the movie that could have been made. One of the movies we were talking about is, you know, Barton bringing over Natasha. They had another perfect example to go on what DT was saying. So, you know, one dose of chemicals is eventually going to wear off. But let's say that they had something implanted, like that chip that they were talking about, and it gave you a continual dose of those chemicals. And it was implanted in such a place that it's hard to get out without killing them.
Yeah.
And Fury finds out about it and tells Barton, who is the one marksman on the planet who could pick that thing off precisely and free Natasha from her mind control.
That's great.
Hawkeye. So Hawkeye finds out about it. And Fury's like, we got new information, whatever. And Barton's fighting her, and he just like, you know, he takes like a pin, like a straight pin or something that ricochets it off 4 walls. Ding, 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 boom, right there. Kills it. You know, kills the mind control thing. And she goes unconscious. She wakes up at a SHIELD safe house 2 days later, and the drugs are starting to wear off, and bim, bam, boom, beginning the movie, here we go, you know.
So there were definitely ways that it could have been done, and I was deeply dissatisfied. And this is what I said at the beginning. I would explain. I was deeply dissatisfied and disenchanted with Black Widow's death in Endgame. This movie made me hate it more because she deserved a better send-off than that, because she's a more complex character than that. And even if I'm going to go ahead on and accept the Endgame ending, if I'm going to accept that, then I needed Natasha to say what I just said. You know, I lived my life. I've lived that life. I've broken free. You know, if I'm going to give my life, it's going to be my choice. If I'm going to give my life, it's going to be to save the world. Maybe I brought more damage in the world than I thought, but now I'm going to save it. Something more heroic, something more noble, something more than what came across was a little bit almost like, you know, Clint, I'm kind of desperate to die. So I got to come here to go head on and take myself out. So you're not going to stop me. And that kind of thing. Yeah. The whole thing about, you know, fighting your best friend or your first love or whatever the heck they were from committing suicide, you know, that kind of thing. And so I'm like, y'all just kept making Natasha more and more small.
No, that scene would have played out a lot better if she'd have like zapped Clint. It's like, you know, Clint's like, oh, one of us has got to go, and you know, you're more important. You know, she zaps him. You know, he's laying there too stunned to move, and she's like, you know, this is my chance to make up for everything. And unlike me, you do have a family and something to live for. And then she takes the dive. There didn't need to be a big fight, and that would have been a much more impactful moment.
I will say that, you know, my last comment before we wrap it all up is that in the two Endgame and Infinity War, I agree with you. They made her small, but I think they kind of stepped on their feminist message as well, because they showed Natasha as empty and not wanting to live anymore because she didn't feel she could have family. And it's like, yeah, she had this horrible thing happen to her, but she had other family. She had family in Barton's family.
She did.
But yeah, and that doesn't jive with what we've seen before, where like she was trying to engage with Bruce.
Yeah.
You know, she was looking for a companion. She wasn't desperate to die.
That's right.
But they totally just got rid of that aspect of her personality.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think they really did step on the feminist message a little bit, which is, you know, for the longest time, and rightly so, to be, in my opinion, you know, I have nothing against women who want to have children, but a woman's worth is not only in her having children. You could have family without it, and a whole host of other things. And they kind of stepped on that a little bit, if you were being honest about it.
Yeah, well, definitely that scene with Banner in Age of Ultron is not someone who was trying to die, do whatever. That was someone who's trying to escape their pain and run away, which was rather teenagery, but it wasn't suicidal, which was the point. It was fairy tale-ish for sure, but not suicidal. And then the final scene with Yelena by her grave upends everything that we saw in Endgame, because did she get a grave? Did she get a service? Did Yelena go back and make that tombstone? Did the family do that? Why don't more Avengers know that she has a grave there? Because the grave is public knowledge, because there were flowers and all those other stuff on it. So that kind of blows your whole, what happened to Natasha's service, because everybody's mourning over Tony, but we're like, well, wait a minute. And once again, that made her almost inconsequential.
Honestly, when they're doing the cemetery, the scene for Tony, they should have it should have been like Arlington in a way. They should set aside a plot just for the Avengers, and there would have been Tony and Natasha's plot.
There you go. That's it.
I said I wasn't going to say anything else, but the last thing I'll say about the end credit scene, one, is anybody like me and already hate the Elaine Bennis character after this in Falcon and Winter Soldier? Elaine Bennis in the MCU, Julia Louis-Dreyfus. I can't stand her. And the other thing is, why did Elena do the Hunger Games Mockingbird whistle?
Yeah, what was that all about?
What was that?
It was to tease us, to make us think that maybe Natasha wasn't dead and she'd whistle back.
I guess. I was sitting there. I was waiting for someone to do the Mockingbird sign, the Mockingjay sign, from Hunger Games.
All right, we're gonna wrap it up. So in conclusion, no matter what our angle and what our perspective, the one thing we can agree on, and remember, we're not doing the thing that nerds get accused of throwing tantrum because it wasn't what I wanted. We're doing the thing of, there was a good movie in there somewhere, but they didn't bring it out here where we could see it. And that's the biggest thing of all. Go ahead.
We didn't hate female character either. We wanted something great for this character as she left. Scarlett Johansson was great as Black Widow. So.
Yeah. That whole thing is just an empty accusation, because we've always loved strong female characters. That's not ever been a real thing in geek world. You can go back to Linda Carter's Wonder Woman. You can go back to Jamie Summers, the Bionic Woman. You can go back to Joanna Cameron's Isis. You can go all the way back in the day. We have always loved Ripley, Sarah Connor, Xena, Buffy. We have always loved our action heroes.
I even liked Electric Woman and Dyna Girl.
Dyna Girl, right, our female action heroes. But it's what you said, Nemesis, that's the biggest tragedy of all, that Natasha from the comics is the James Bond, and if you want to give her any other kind of angle, the Jason Bourne of the MCU. And that's who we should have seen all the way through. And this character was someone who wasn't sure who she was from movie to movie. And now that we have an insight as to what she came from, it had a retroactive effect on everything else we've seen, but not in a good way. So we're just hoping going forward that we can see some of the respect necessary to really pull the story off, and just some solid storytelling, just a solid plan from the beginning, like we got originally, and things unfolding where they make sense, where the things that have already been established jive and coalesce and fit with the things that we see later. Black Widow, I'm sorry to say, is the opposite of that. Black Widow has that opposite effect, that everything we saw in this film totally upends everything we've seen up to this point. But we still love ScarJo. We still love Natasha Romanoff. I love the comics version. She's just a completely different character, but, I love both of them. And, we just wish she had gotten a better send-off. And we want to see some more of the Russian Incredibles. So perhaps when they introduce Yelena, they did say that Rachel Weisz's character is coming back, and maybe Red Guardian too. So we will see the Ursat's parents again, I think, just not Natasha. So that's going to be a good time. So at least we have that to look forward to. All right. I want to thank my guests. Thank you so much, Nemesis.
No problem. This was a great discussion. I really loved it.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bracey.
Always a pleasure. And my prescription is to go out and watch good movies.
Good movies are good for you. That's it. Don't forget to check out the other things we have on United Capes Podcast Network. And we will see you the next time on the next episode of Sloppy Spoilers. Spoilers.